In this week's episode of Space Dandy, we get to learn about the three important things in life: sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And Dandy don't need no instructions to know how to rock. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. You get it. Your ass is a major part of your life, and it deserves the same level of respect as the rest of you. And after a long day of mud wrestling and grandma's chocolate pudding, you want to feel fresh. And you can, with One Wipe Charlie's. I'd also highly recommend checking out their high-quality razor blades, which can also be shipped directly to you. You can find a link for them in our description box below at dollarshaveclub.com/SKG. And make sure to check out the One Wipe Charlie's. With their peppermint scent, they'll make your ass smell like Christmas morning. I think that at one time or another, we've all had dreams or aspirations to be a part of a band. A lot of us even tried it when we were younger. I know I did a couple of times, and it didn't really work out. And that's what Dandy's doing this week, with a little bit of help from his brand new friend Johnny. And they actually make it pretty big. They start their own band called the Dropkicks, and they even are a one-hit wonder. However, it's the build-up to their very first gig, which is very funny. This week's episode was very creative, and honestly, I didn't expect another musical episode anytime soon, especially after the whole High School Musical one. However, this one really only had like one major musical number, and that was at the very end of the episode. Because even though Dandy has sort of formed a band, most of the episode does not consist of them practicing their songs whatsoever. It's basically about the important stuff of what it means to be a rock star, which is figuring out what your band's name is going to be, what sort of free merchandise you're going to be giving away, what type of t-shirts you're going to sell, what type of drugs you're going to buy, what type of women you're going to have sex with. The important things of being a rock star. Yes, that's what they seem to bicker over in this week's episode, and it makes for a lot of funny things. The big twist is, the brand new member of this band, Johnny, is not just a hardcore rocker, he also happens to be the leader of the Jicro Empire, which is the other empire that the Gogol Empire is going to war with, and they're getting ready to have this massive offensive against this big weapon that the Gogol Empire has created, and it just so happens that the day of this attack is going to go on the day of the Dropkicks' very first concert, and this is where Johnny has to make the ultimate decision. War or gig? Gig or war? It's a really tough decision, and he feels like he has to support his empire. But really what makes this episode good is the way that Dandy and Johnny interact with each other. They're constantly at each other's throat trying to take over the band. In fact, the reason that they're actually called the Dropkicks, that's kicks with a K-I-X, is because Honey suggested the name, because they're constantly drop-kicking each other, because they're always at each other's throats. And speaking of Honey, she has a lot of fan-service-y scenes this week. Wiggle wiggle, you know what I'm saying. I also like the fact that Meow and QT get to be members of the band. Meow doesn't seem too happy that he gets to be the bassist, but bass is awesome. Just look at Les Claypool. And it is appropriate that QT would be the drummer. But really, the first half of the episode is just getting to see them forming their band, trying to figure out how they're going to structure everything. QT and Meow are the only ones who actually practice at their instruments. Johnny's going to be guitar, and Dandy's going to be lead vocals. I guess that makes sense. But eventually it does all lead up to the night of their big gig, and Johnny decides that he's going to go to war with the Gogol Empire, and Dandy embarrassingly on stage tries to give it his best by playing basically air guitar and look like a moron, and everybody starts pelting him with garbage, when suddenly Johnny decides to abandon his mission and fly down in this massive gun cannon-like weapon. I say gun cannon because it looks just like the mecha from the original Mobile Suit Gundam gun cannon, and it even has like a massive lion head in its chest. It's ridiculous, it's anime logic, but he makes a great badass entrance, and then they finally get to play their first gig, which actually goes over really well, aside from the fact that Dandy accidentally lights his hair on fire and causes a huge accident, which actually ends their very first gig. It'll be their only gig, in fact. They're a one-hit wonder. But because they formed this band, and because Johnny was so obsessed with becoming a rock star, they sort of inadvertently, like, stopped this massive war, which was going to destroy everything. So, in a way, rock and roll saved the day. And that's what's awesome about this week's episode. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Space Dandy? It was awesome. I love this type of stuff, especially when it starts to involve rock and roll. I wouldn't call their style of music anything too heavy, but I really liked it at the end. You know, obviously, they're having a lot of fun with the musical aspects of Space Dandy lately. You could see that with a musical episode, and you could see that with this one. But this one was more about, like, the dynamic of what, like, a rock star group is really like. In particular, they really brought out a lot of elements from, like, 80s rock stars and everything, and there was just a ton of humor this week. Just Dandy and Johnny beating the crap out of each other, a great scene when they were hanging out at Boobies and he was trying french fries for the first time, and somehow QT got in the middle of their fight, and literally, Johnny took his guitar and smacked QT and ended up sending him into space. There were a lot of crazy animated scenes like that, and Johnny himself is a very simple-looking character. Just he looks kind of like a human with pointy ears, just slightly alien-like, but he wears this really badass cosmic cape when he's hanging out with the Jicro guys, which apparently is an empire that consists of massive robots and mushroom people. It's Space Dandy. You have to just sort of accept that stuff. Otherwise, technical stuff about this week's episode, the animation and the artwork was really good. That combined with all of the crazy lighting, especially at the concert, was really appealing. All, of course, the crazy aliens. The Honey fan service was all over the place this week. They were definitely having fun with her angles. There were a lot of funny scenes when she was just sprawling herself across their table at Boobies, and there was a great scene where she was literally, like, shaking her ass right in front of Meow's face, and he was just so, like, entranced by it. And that's not even an important scene. That's just, like, something going on in the random corner, and that's just, like, all the things that are great about this series. There's so many little things you can pick out in the background of everywhere. The music and stuff at the end was pretty good, nothing too crazy, but it is always funny to hear Dandy sing, especially because it seems like it's becoming like a standard at this point. I'm interested to see if they're actually going to bring Johnny back in the future, because the whole Gogol Empire versus the Jicro Empire thing is like, they've hinted at it throughout the entire Space Dandy series, but the show has no continuity, so we might never see, like, Johnny again, but honestly, he was, like, a good foil for Dandy, and in fact, they actually had a lot in common. They were very similar, and they seemed like they could just be really good friends. He's made a lot of interesting friends and met a lot of cool people over the series. But otherwise, this episode right here was really good. It was really well paced. It had a ton of funny moments, a lot of great imagery, some badass music. I just really dug this one, especially because I'm a big fan of rock and roll in general, and I love music, and I love anime, and this is like the perfect combination of both of those things. So if you're a fan of the series, definitely check out this week's episode. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Rock and roll. Thank you guys for watching my review today. Before you leave, make sure and hit that like button so you can give this video a thumbs up. And please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Space Dandy. And make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And make sure to check us out on both Facebook and on Twitter. I'll put links for both of those in the description box below.
Do you like Amazon.com? I know I do. Corey and I now have an Amazon link in our video description box below. And if you go to it and buy anything through Amazon.com, it will support our channel. So bookmark that link, make it happen, and support our channel without having to do a damn thing.
Another great way you guys can help support our channel is by donating directly through our PayPal link in the description box below. We recommend $2 a month, although this is completely optional. But the best way to go about this is by sneaking into your mom's room and taking $2. This way, she won't even notice. And we won't have to shake you up for all of your lunch money. So guys, that concludes this review today. Super Kami Guru 9000. Out.